When my kids discovered Legos, I rediscovered Legos. Toy that I had loved to play with as a kid. But the other thing that I rediscovered and remembered besides the sets was the fun of just building, of just making. Some people's medium is oils or charcoals, and some people's medium is music, and maybe my medium is small plastic bricks. I rediscovered the instruction that my mom had given me at a young age. She told me, you have to stop following the directions. You have to just start creating on your own. You have to stop following the directions. This is a source of both my great strength and weakness, because sometimes you really do have to follow the directions. Last fall, I started thinking that I would build a scale model of Mont Saint-Michel, the island city castle church off the coast of France, and realized that to do it at minifig scale, it would be 7 feet tall and 25 feet across, so I scaled it back a little bit. But as I started to create this thing over a period of weeks, I began with foundations, with building the foundations onto which something could be put. This time, I didn't want to just build a church. I wanted to build a church and put it on the top of a hill. And to do that took cathedral thinking. Cathedral thinking is long-term thinking. When medieval cathedrals were built, they were a project that took generations to build. So cathedral thinking meant that I might work my whole life just to set a foundation, just to raise one pillar. And that would be all of my contribution, but it was going towards something bigger, that the point is not just to put in a foundation or just to raise one pillar, but to be part of something that endures, part of something that we could imagine, this end result that we could see in our heart, in our imagination, even if it wasn't going to happen in our own lifetime. That sort of cathedral thinking doesn't have to extend across generations. Cathedral thinking means we pay attention to the things that we can do right now, to the things that we can do today that make the future possible, that make something else possible in the days and the years to come. But you also do this in your spiritual life, tending to the foundations that day by day don't transform you radically, but over time prepare the way for the kind of person that you're becoming. You say sometimes here that you're beloved both as you are and as you can become. You say sometimes, we love you exactly like you are, and you could use a little bit of work. We could all use a little bit of work. We say, come into this house and be both the person that you are right now and grow into that person that you're becoming as you follow the call of your own life. Cathedral thinking means tending to the foundations of your spiritual path. It means paying attention to those things on top of which your life is built. Sometimes we get really obsessed with the end result, right? Instagram reality that is so focused and obsessed with how do things look on their surfaces. The way that we curate our Facebook profiles. So much of this stuff is surfaces. We're people who are concerned with the foundations that lie behind those surfaces. I think often von Ogden-Vogt, the minister of this church many years ago, the one who built this Gothic sanctuary, said that calm repose and a steadfast endurance of the Spirit is induced by a clean wall of stone well laid. I think about that when I think of us being foundations people. People who tend not just to the surfaces of things, but to the order, to the solidity. People in our own lives trying to create a spiritual path, a person that is as solidly grounded as these stone walls are. People who tend to foundations. In our spiritual life, we're constantly building and rebuilding. Constantly, over and over, tending to our foundations, realizing that something isn't strong enough and going back and adding additional cross-bracing to make it toughen up, to stand up to the living. In Legos, a piece can fall off. You just put it back on again. That same thing is true in our own lives. You lose the thread, you lose your temper, you lose your gratitude, you lose any sense of awe, wonder, or hope for the world. That's okay. The piece fell off. You just pick it up and you put the thing back on again. And it's going to fall off again. Legos aren't permanent. This was the entire plot of the first Lego movie, is how awful it is to glue your Legos together. Don't do that. The things come apart and they come back together again. This is the lives that we live. What are for you those foundations that your spiritual life rests on? What are the foundations strong enough to hold up a life that is spacious and beautiful? A life of service and integrity, a life of joy, a life of beauty. There are practices that let us tend to the foundations. Last week, Reverend Terry talked about square breathing, that way of recentering and resettling yourself down again. For me, practices like that are a way of remembering what really matters. They're a way of letting go of the surface world of things and recentering, regrounding, saying, all right, where are my foundations today? What kind of shape are they in? Are there any cracks here that need tending to? Are there any pieces that have fallen off in the last few days? I can put them back on again. I can keep on going. Tending to your spiritual foundation, just like tending to the maintenance in this building, or reattaching the pieces that fall off, rebuilding the parts of the structure that aren't solid, tending to your spiritual foundations is a practice which we continually lose and have to rediscover and attach the pieces back together again. That foundation lets you weather the storm. I try to tell folks who didn't grow up in a church tradition, or if they did, just didn't get anything out of it, that the worship service, church service on a Sunday morning isn't something that just happens to you. And this is true whether we're meeting physically in the building or whether we're gathering online. Whether you're watching this along with a whole crew of 80 other people on a Sunday morning, or you're watching it by yourself 2 years later in the middle of the night in another country. Worship isn't something that's happening to you, it's a practice that you're doing. It's not passive, it's active. It's something that you're engaged with. So we're singing together, putting ourselves into a place and a mindset, even for those of us who aren't singers, of making something together, making music with our bodies together. In the prayer and in the meditation, it's an explicit invitation to go somewhere inside yourself, to shift your mindset. So often we'll say at the beginning of that prayer, set down all this baggage that you carry with you. It's because it's a practice. That's not my work to set that down for you. That's your work to do in the service. It's active. That worship service is a practice of renewal, a practice of tending to foundations. And at different moments, there are different opportunities to remember awe or wonder or gratitude. One of my favorite parts of these online services each week is seeing folks greet each other in the chat, coming together to offer a welcome and hello and fellowship and connection. That's active. That's something you do. Worship isn't something that is given to you, it's something you co-create. It's an opportunity for practice to tend to your foundations, to tend to foundations of service and joy and integrity and awe and connection and humanity and humility and on and on and on, and beauty too. Part of what always sets my heart and my mind at ease as a pastor and a preacher is knowing that I'm not really the one doing the work right now. I'm saying some things, I'm working, but look, you're the one doing the work. You're the one engaging with this thing. When the invitation to prayer comes, that's your work. When the invitation to sing comes, that's your work. Even when the invitation to listen to Jeff playing and our singers making music together comes, that's your work to put your mind and your heart in the place ready to receive that beauty. Putting yourself into that state of being and thinking is attending to your foundations. What makes possible the heights and the beauty is paying careful attention to what those rest on. And that's our work today. And that's our work every day. And the pieces are going to fall off. And that's okay. We just put them back on again, pick ourselves up, patch another crack in the foundation, and keep on. Amen.